We're live. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Carmen Rios here, managing digital editor at Ms. with what is left of my voice after last night.
It was quite a night.
Yes, and I'm here with Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, who I did talk to last night, but I'm excited to talk to you even more today.
We talked last night, and we talked on Facebook Live like a couple of years ago.
2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess, what month would that have been?
October.
Okay.
Oh, no, actually, I was here. We did this in November 2017. The book came out in October 2017, and we were here in LA together in November.
My first ever Facebook Live Q&A, and we are now using a laptop on a stand, but last time we were using a phone propped up on a stack of books.
Look at all these books.
Yes, and I have my signed copy of Periods Gone Public from 2017 in hardcover.
I have the brand new paperback that comes out on June 18th, available on Amazon and other fine places where one buys
I'll
books.
drop an Amazon link into the comments.
This is the shiny paperback version with like blurbs and more blurbs. And this is we're going to talk about today, a brand new preface,
which we excerpted on MsMagazine.com.
Yeah, that's true. We excerpted it on Menstrual Hygiene Day on May 28th.
Yes, which I've nicknamed Menstrual Equity Day because I think that is...
Menstrual equity is very broad phrase and frame, really intended to capture sort of all the different ways globally people address menstrual health, menstrual hygiene, menstrual access, menstrual education. It all falls under this umbrella of equity. And that's really what's intended by referring to it as menstrual equity, as it is in the book, taking a stand for menstrual equity. Yeah, so we excerpted the preface on the Ms. website, and it was kind of neat to write. I wrote it actually in January of 2019, and was at that time even kind of blown away thinking about how much progress and how much momentum has happened in this arena. And now it's June, and there's even more to talk about. It's kind of this issue that has exploded into our conscience. As we talked about last night at the gala last night, the folks who did the film that won the Oscar, the short
yes,
that
period,
won the Oscar,
end of sentence. Yeah.
And it was really just incredibly exciting to hear from the kids and the crew and the whole team that was part of that that amazing contribution to this movement and this cause.
Well, and I was going to say sort of, it's been almost exactly 2 years. Again, I guess it's been like a year and a half. But basically, where were we when this book came out, and where are we now that this book is coming out?
Well, interesting, when this book came out in 2017, I had thought, as I looked at the activism around menstruation and advocacy and policy agenda and the politics of menstruation, to me it seemed that 2015 was a really big turning point. That was sort of the year that the issue kind of exploded into the media and really kind of captured the national conscience. That was the year that, if anyone can remember, there was a time where Donald Trump wasn't president, and there were 17 front runners for the Republican ticket in August of 2015.
That is when that out. Yeah.
Okay, so he stood on stage in Ohio and said that Megyn Kelly had blood coming out of her wherever. So that was the year that menstruation really kind of took its place in the limelight, I think, in the public conscience. And since then, there's been, as we mentioned, sort of an extraordinary activism and advocacy community pushing for destigmatization of menstruation in all kinds of environments, in the arts, in education, in the media and public discourse, as well as policies and laws that actually better reflect the experience of people who menstruate and what they need to be able to fully participate in their education, the economy, and society. So 2017 was we were kind of midstream, I guess. That's when this had already had kind of ignited.
Yeah.
And the work was happening in real time. I mean, I wrote it in real time. I remember publishers cancel around now, and I was like, no, but something new just happened that I need to write about. And they said, well, whatever. A book is a point in time, and this is what was happening at this point in time. So it was kind of neat to revisit it for the paperback. And when writing the new preface, say, okay, well, what's happened since then, and why, and how? So a lot has happened since then. many, many, many more laws have been passed to ensure menstrual access for people who are incarcerated, for students who are, for students, and for people who are in school, for people who are experiencing homelessness or otherwise face, other challenges to being able to afford menstruation. The tampon tax has come down in one more state since the book came out. Since the campaign to end the tampon tax started, in 2015, 5 states have gotten it done. 4 of them had already done so by that book. So yet one more by this book. Yay. The paper book, the state of Nevada did so by ballot measure in November 2018. And then even more so, the discussion and the dialogue has continued to persevere, maybe more than persevere, has continued to thrive with things like Oscar-winning films and, Instagram influencers talking about it and people tweeting about it who are high profile. The conversation just hasn't stopped. And even more so, I think in these very, very treacherous political times, and especially these treacherous political times for women, when we look at what's happening right now with abortion full-on bans and very heavy-handed restrictions happening in so many of the states, we're also thinking about what it means to be fully reflected and represented in our laws and by our lawmakers. And menstruation is part of that conversation and inextricably connected to it. So I think that even though the world feels really scary and frustrating and makes us angry right now, there's also a lot to really celebrate and be grateful for, certainly around menstrual equity, but the idea that we are now making this demand, we're not asking nicely, and the time has come. I mean, and we mean business. We're here.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, what do you think? I'm always curious too, because we also have seen the tampon tax lifted in a few other countries as well, right? Since the book came out.
Yes, and I should mention that that's true. Globally, this campaign has really, it's captured people's, not just their ire and not just their, agitation, but their imagination. And they see why it matters, and they see that it's achievable, and so much feels intractable these days and so deeply polarized. But this is one that's just winning, and it's kind of shocking that menstruation would be the thing that we go, yeah, everybody agrees on. Because I got to say, when I started doing this work, people are like, you're talking about what? Are you sure that's what you want to do with your life? You want to put what word on your book cover? Yeah. You've had you're a nice lawyer. Why would you want to talk about periods? But no, everywhere from India to Malaysia to South Africa, we've seen change around the world. And this discussion just, again, taking off like wildfire around the world. It's kind of crazy. We want to talk about this. Do you want to talk about periods? I actually love talking about it. So there you go.
Yeah, and what do you think we have to learn from the victories you've been watching, maybe like since 2015? What seems to be effective? Like, what can organizers take away from how this movement has
That's exploded? A really good question. I mean, I think that one of the things we're in danger of right now is having a lot of traction in terms of people being interested, but ensuring that we stay on message, that our advocacy is drilled down and super effective. So one of the things that I think is really important, and I talk about a lot in the book, and again in this frame, menstrual equity, it's been really important to frame this as a matter of equity. There are a lot of ways you can push legislators to think about what you're asking them to act upon, and some will motivate them or move them, and some might make them back off a little bit or be a little bit afraid. And I think menstruation has again fallen in that kind of strange sweet spot where you can talk about women's bodies and women in the economy, but you don't have to venture into things that will be automatically alienating for certain audiences. But that equity frame and referring it to it as menstrual equity and referring to the fight as one is ensuring equitable participation, again, when one's education or in the workplace, is a really important tool and strategy. So that would be one answer to that question. I bet you I have others too, but that's the one that I think I urge activists and around this issue to be really mindful of their language.
Well, and I like that because last night's celebration was of, you know, menstrual equity and the growing movement there, but then also this reinvigorated growing movement for the Equal Rights Amendment. And I always sort of tell people that one of the major things that I can say to summarize why the ERA matters is sort of, you know, it's not about fairness, it's about the law. It's about having an accountability measure beyond a matter of morals or principles, right? Like being able to say, it's not just that that's unfair treatment because...
Or a good idea.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to talk about that equity framework because you've also talked a lot about how the movement for the ERA and the movement for menstrual equity kind of can't exist without one another.
They can exist without one another, but they're better off when they exist with cohesion. And that's something, and I wrote about that, I think, for Ms. earlier this year, maybe in January. I've become, I sort of age-wise fall in between. I'm not of the age of the original, renegades for the Equal Rights Amendment in the 1970s and in the early 1980s. I was just, I was a kid then. And the reemergence of this campaign has been exciting and surprising, even to people like me who hadn't really thought that there was still life left in this campaign, and it was something we left behind, and we'd sort of figured out ways to make the law work without having this ultimate declaration. And then I guess it's just been in the past few years that activists have stood up and said, well, why the hell why would we be giving up or walking away from this ultimate declaration when that is actually the heart of it? And we stand apart as a country that has not actually stated explicitly in our Constitution that there should be equality for men and women. So the fact that the campaign has reinvigorated and that we're so tantalizingly close to actually seeing this through, we're one state away from 38 state ratification requirement, is extraordinarily exciting. And for folks who are watching who aren't steeped in ERA history or politics, they should read at Ms. all about it, because there's lots of information there to understand what this is, what happened in the first place, why it doesn't exist right now. Just so folks know, there is not equality in the Constitution right now, and why it's a fight that we need to complete. But then menstrual equity, emerged on this separate track over the past several years. And it was actually U.S. Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney had written a piece back, I guess, in the summer of 2018 about gender-based pricing and the continued persistence of the pink tax, which is a little different. It's not tampon tax, but the pink tax is this pernicious practice of companies that market products separately for women and men and sell the products that are marketed to women for more. And so while we're making less money on the dollar, and women of color are making even less money than white women on the dollar, we're all paying more if we're not aware of the fact that a pink razor costs more than a blue razor. And sure, the burden can be on us to just go remember to buy a blue razor, but really, the idea that we're being bled dry in every corner of this economy.
Such an appropriate pun.
I have to make one pun. Can't help it. But so Carolyn Maloney, in releasing this report that showed the continued persistence of gender-based pricing, and not even just in pink razors or bicycles, but in mortgages and business loans and all the ways that women are paying more to exist in this culture and this society, she commented that the Equal Rights Amendment would be a vehicle for ensuring that we are taking this head on and not having to fight every fight piecemeal and bit by bit. And she included the tampon tax in her summary of all of the ways, again, where I'm going to make a blood joke, bled dry. And I thought, oh my gosh, she is absolutely right. And it was such a thrill to be able to link this work that has been my passion for the past several years to the work for the ERA, and something that has been, the project and the mission of a generation. So it's been really exciting to start making that argument publicly, to acknowledge that menstruation and the ability to manage menstruation has to be implicit and explicit in gender equality, and inevitably to link that to the ERA.
Totally. And I also like the thought of the ERA, because even in the relatively to many of the women I work with, or the women that I've, been inspired from the short that I've been working in movement, I've already seen this idea of like, we're still having the same conversation about abortion or violence. Like, things progress, and yet the discourse and the goalposts are still standing still because it's so hard to finally tear them down. I like to think of the ERA as like, will finally be, you know, that will be, this argument will be settled.
It can help be part of the game changer. It's funny. I'm one of the, I always see pictures of, you know, older women and grandmas at marches with like holding these signs like, I can't believe I still have to protest this shit. And I found pictures and letters to the editor that I wrote in college about all of these. I went to the March on Washington in 1989 when the Webster case was being argued in the Supreme Court. And that was a really life-changing experience for me. I was on a fairly conservative college campus. I had no idea that what it would be like to see just like a sea of pro-choice people and voices. And anyway, I found, I dug up all the letters to my college newspaper that I wrote about it. And I was reading them and I thought, holy crap, this was 30 years ago. I wrote this letter in 1989, and I could be writing the exact same thing today. So yeah, it is time to change the rules. I mean, one of the things people, or not just change the rules, but acknowledge why the rules must include us. Somebody, this is maybe a slightly even more radical thought about the ERA and even beyond the ERA. Somebody asked me a question about, you know, our systems being broken, and, you know, are the things that I've been learning as I've been working in menstrual policy, you know, more proof or more of a demonstration of why our systems are broken. And my response was that I had the exact opposite revelation. Our systems seem to be working exactly as they were intended, which is to exclude us from power and to ensure that the power structures are meant to exclude us too. So the Equal Rights Amendment is the start of our new conversation about saying these systems weren't created by us, they weren't created for us, and they weren't created of us. And we are setting an entirely new benchmark. The ERA is where we go forward from it. It's not where we end. It's not our point of, I'm going to make another period joke. It's not like our exclamation point or period. It's not the end of the sentence. It is actually the start of the next chapter.
Yes. And so I'm also curious, sort of, you know, we talk about things like the tampon tax, or these individual bills that make menstrual products accessible to lower income girls in schools, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. What for you is the big vision of menstrual equity? Like, what does it look like? Not maybe like 5 or 10 years from now, but sort of what is the big, this will be the revelatory moment where we finally reached a new point?
I don't know actually that in 5 years or 10 years or even 50 years that we'll reach that point, because we have centuries to undo. But what I do think is that these bills to make menstrual products more accessible and more affordable, they're just scraping the surface. I mean, it's great because they are needed, and we've heard testimony and reports from people that say, yes, no, I do need these products, and it makes a difference in my life and it improves my life. So I'm very, very glad to fight for the here and now. But this entire agenda is about something so much bigger. This entire agenda is making the case for how and demonstrating in real time and in a real circumstance what laws look like when they do not reflect our lives and our reality. So this is like, you know, exhibit A of what it looks like to have laws that don't reflect our reality and to demand laws that do. So in this case, accessible menstrual products. Not so crazy of an ask. But it's like the gateway to all of the things we need to be acknowledging and recognizing. I read in the news this morning that it was a county jail, I don't remember what state, that a lawyer's underwire bra set off the security checkpoint, and they asked her to remove her bra to enter because there must have been wire or something that triggered it. And I thought, the problem, okay, so this is a problem, lawyers being asked to disrobe to enter to do their work, okay? But the real problem is, why the hell do we have a system that makes it seem like we're the exception or we're the broken piece? Maybe the broken piece is not acknowledging that half the lawyers walk through the door are wearing bras. So it's how we're looking at the world. We're not looking at it like, please fix this for us so we can do our jobs. We need to look at it and say, we're half the population, we do our jobs. How should laws look so they work for us?
Yeah, like it's not just I need access to menstrual products. It's I need a healthcare system and an economy that allows me to access the things I need to thrive.
Or it forces us to look at those laws and say, what do we need to thrive? And then how do we make sure our policies reflect that? So somewhere along the way, all of the things women need to thrive never got factored into the equation. Every time we talk about it, it's like we're asking for some special fix or some special favor. So I think what we have to do, I'm not saying we have to like tear the whole thing down, burn the whole thing down. Okay, I'm going to do like a Hulu plug here. Burn it all down. Handmaids on tonight. That's their hashtag. It's burn it down.
Tonight. Oh,
I know.
So exciting.
I know. Okay, so yes, burn it down. We're all
under your eye,
June.
Jennifer.
Yeah. Blessed be the fruit. But my point is, where was my point? My point is that the systems need to be looked at not as though we need to figure out how to repair them or how to restore or revitalize them, but how should they have been built properly in the first place, and how do we make that happen now? So menstruation is just one lens of which to look at our laws through. There's lots and lots of others, but I found that looking at it through the lens of menstruation has enabled me to see this entirely different, like, bizarro universe where we could be fully equal participants were our representatives to look at the world through the lens of our reality. So menstruation is one way to do that. And the immediate need, like we said, is real. So fighting for these laws one by one is important, but understanding that it's going to be the pathway to having this reflection of what an egalitarian society looks like is the end game.
I love it. And so here we are with our menstrual equity update. And I loved this joke, so I'm going to build off of it, that it's not the end of the sentence, that this has sort of just begun. And you're guiding the way. And thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Everything with Ms. You are the best. Ms. is the best. I love being here. It's like my favorite corner in the universe. It's book corner. Right. Surrounded by
it's a magical
space. Surrounded by all of the women on whose shoulders we've arrived here.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. And everyone go out and buy the book in hardcover
or paperback.
And you'll definitely hear more from Jennifer on Ms. and elsewhere on the internet. And
I'm everywhere.
Yeah. And we'll be keeping you posted on menstrual equity, obviously. And
Okay, cool. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.